Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Monday Night Raw tonight was from the Bon Secours Wellness Arena in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's a new year, and same old shit from WWE. Same shit on Monday Night Raw. This show tonight was absolutely fucking atrocious. God awful. What do we get on the show tonight? We had the Alpha Academy versus RKBro. Didn't we see this last week in one-on-one matches? They should have did this last week. But yet, they want to do it this week. Then we had a mixed tag team match where Reggie and Brooke ended up taking on Akira, Tozawa, and Tamina. And if Brooke lost that match, she would lose the 24/7 title. Who gives a shit? Who cares? We had the women's tag team titles on the line. Queen Zelina Vega and Carmella versus Rhea Ripley and Nikki A.S.H. Damian Priest defend the United States Championship once again against Dolph Ziggler. We saw this last week, only the match ended in a disqualification last week. And then we saw what I would say is contender for the worst match of the year so far, Omos versus AJ Styles. And then in the main event, we had a fatal four-way. It was Bobby Lashley versus Kevin Owens, Big E, and Seth Rollins. The winner gets to face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble. So we got that match. But overall, Monday Night Raw tonight was absolutely fucking atrocious. God awful. Like I said, new year, same old shit. So before I start the review, if you guys haven't checked out my previous video that I uploaded earlier today, did another movie hunting video where I went to the Salvation Army, see if they had anything new for DVD, VHS, Blu-ray wise, and they got in a whole lot of DVDs from the last time I was there, which was a month ago. So be sure to check out my movie hunting video if you guys haven't seen it. So it's up on my channel. But let's jump right into the review of this horrendous Monday Night Raw tonight. So Monday Night Raw opened up with Paul Heyman. And WWE did something right here, and they just copied AEW where the lights were out in the arena, and then when the lights came back on, Paul Heyman was in the ring. Yes, Paul Heyman was on Monday Night Raw tonight. So Paul Heyman appeared in the ring. He did his whole introduction where, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. So he gave an introduction to his client, Brock Lesnar, the new WWE champion, which Brock Lesnar won the title at day one on Saturday. So Brock Lesnar ended up coming out, got some pyro, and Paul Heyman is back with Brock Lesnar. He's now Brock Lesnar's client again after he got fired by Roman Reigns, which, I thought that they were going to do Paul Heyman screwing Brock Lesnar, and he was going to still be with Roman Reigns. But eventually, Roman ended up getting COVID, so those plans didn't end up happening. So now, Paul Heyman is back with Brock Lesnar. He's now Brock Lesnar's client again. So, Brock Lesnar ended up raising the title in the air. He ended up rushing into the ring. He grabbed half of the ring steps. He tossed the half of the ring step into the ring. So Lesnar ended up setting up half of the ring step in the middle of the ring. He ended up standing on top of it. And Lesnar ended up getting on the mic. He ended up saying, first, he wants to give a shout out to his buddy, Roman Reigns, the Universal Champion. Lesnar ended up saying that Reigns is probably tuned in at home, and that Reigns is watching the real champion, So Brock Lesnar was laughing. Paul Heyman was also laughing as well. Lesnar ended up sending Reigns his get well wishes. Lesnar then ended up calling on the people of South Carolina to acknowledge him. So Lesnar ended up saying that he also wants to acknowledge his advocate for advocating his free agency. So Lesnar ended up bowing to Paul Heyman, ended up thanking him. So then Paul Heyman got on the mic. He ended up saying that if you think it's hot out here, you should see the things that go on behind the scenes, like his negotiations for Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman ended up confirming that Brock Lesnar will defend the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble against the winner of the Fatal 4-Way match, which was the main event later on in the night on Monday Night Raw. So Paul Heyman ended up taking shots at Rollins, Big E, and Kevin Owens, and he ended up mentioning how Reigns will be vulnerable on SmackDown without him. Paul Heyman ended up saying, for proof, look at how Reigns got COVID in 1 week without him. So Paul Heyman ended up going on about Bobby Lashley and MVP. Heyman ended up knowing how Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar never met or spoke backstage. And it seemed like they avoided each other while they were backstage. Paul Heyman ended up talking about the interactions between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley in the matchup on Saturday at day 1. Paul Heyman ended up saying that the Hurt Lock on Brock Lesnar and the spear through the barricade were testaments to how good Bobby Lashley is. You know what I'm saying? But every time Bobby Lashley went at Brock Lesnar at day 1, it was from behind or from the side. And he ended up saying that if Bobby Lashley faces Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble, it will have to be face to face. So Paul Heyman ended up saying that Bobby Lashley will have to go down in history as a Brock Lesnar wannabe. Paul Heyman then ended up saying that Big E deserves an applause and was a great champion who did the company justice and is all that and more. Big E deserves an applause because he was a great champion. His reign as WWE champion was absolutely awful. What a waste. So Paul Heyman ended up saying that Big E would still be champion if he didn't have to get in the ring with Brock Lesnar, and they have nothing but respect and admiration for him. Paul Heyman ended up saying that if Big E wins the Fatal 4-Way, it will be an absolute honor to witness Big E versus Brock Lesnar, even though Big E will lose, but lose to the greatest WWE champion of all time. So Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar end up getting out of the ring. Lesnar ended up putting his arm around Paul Heyman, and that was how the segment ended. But really liked this segment. This was a good way to open Monday Night Raw. And after all this, the show just goes downhill for the rest of the show up until the Fatal 4-Way. But got some enjoyment out of this opening with Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. And there was talks saying, oh, Brock Lesnar won't be at Monday Night Raw tonight. And then there was a report that came out later on today saying, oh yeah, Brock Lesnar is going to be at Monday Night Raw tonight. So why put out an article saying, oh yeah, Brock Lesnar, he's not going to be on the show tonight. And then later on, you're like, oh yeah, he is in South Carolina. He is going to be on the show. But really enjoyed this opening with Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. And then we saw RKBro backstage. Randy Orton ended up asking Matt Riddle where he's been. And Randy Orton was like, no, to this piece of gold that Matt Riddle was wearing around his neck. And I'm like, what was Matt Riddle wearing tonight? He was like wearing some greenish blackish get up. So Riddle was talking about how fun it was hanging with Migos at day one. Who? That's all I gotta say is, who? Who is Migos? So then Matt Riddle was bragging about his connections with Migos. So Matt Riddle then proposed a new RKBro rap group. And Orton wasn't interested in that. And he isn't sure how Riddle has all his celebrity connections. Orton ended up taking the gold chains that were on Matt Riddle. He ended up asking about their New Year's resolutions they had. So Orton was being serious as Matt Riddle kept joking around with Orton. And that was that. They headed out to the ring for their match with the Alpha Academy. So RK-Bro, of course, came out first. And then out came the Alpha Academy, Otis and Chad Gable. Gable got on the mic. He ended up bragging about his master's degree. And he was just shitting on the fans for them booing education. So Chad Gable ended up going on about how him and Otis will win the Raw Tag Team titles very soon. So then we saw Chad Gable and Otis, they ended up rushing into the ring. They rushed at Orton and Matt Riddle before the bell even hit. Otis and Chad Gable ended up sending RK-Bro out to the floor, and they kept on attacking them. Otis delivered a overhead throw to Matt Riddle at ringside, and pretty much Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Chad Gable started off with Matt Riddle. The bell ended up ringing. Gable ended up leveling Riddle with a right hand, and Gable went for a Tiger suplex to Riddle, which he went for the cover. Riddle kicked out at 2. So Chad Gable was working on both of Matt Riddle's legs. He had some more offense before Otis ended up tagging in. So Otis got into the ring. He was dominated on Matt Riddle. He dropped the elbow to Riddle. Otis ended up grounding Riddle. Riddle ended up getting back up. He started punching away at Otis. Otis charged into the corner. Riddle ended up leaping, and Otis ended up hitting the ring post. Otis ended up grabbing Matt Riddle to prevent a tag to Orton. Riddle countered and kicked Otis in the jaw. So Gable ended up pulling Orton off the ring apron to prevent Matt Riddle from getting the tag. Otis then ended up splashing Matt Riddle from behind the corner. Orton ended up going for Chad Gable at ringside, and Otis ended up dropping Orton from behind. At the end of the match, Otis ended up countering the RKO by Matt Riddle. He ended up laying Matt Riddle out with a power slam. Otis went for the cover, and there you go. The Alpha Academy ended up winning the match. Overall, match was terrible. We saw this match last week with one-on-one competition between these guys. Why didn't we get this tag team match last week? We saw it last week. Matt Riddle and Chad Gable went at it. And then Randy Orton and Otis. I don't understand why we didn't get this match last week. But how should I know? It's WWE Creative for you. WWE Creative is fucking awful. We shouldn't have had one-on-one competition with these guys last week. We should have got this match last week. And then we had Sarah Schreiber. Sarah Schreiber was backstage with MVP and Bobby Lashley. Sarah Schreiber ended up asking Bobby Lashley about Brock Lesnar. MVP ended up interrupting Sarah Schreiber. He ended up saying how Bobby Lashley has a Herculean task to complete to get the WWE Championship shot against Brock Lesnar. So Bobby Lashley ended up simply saying that Brock Lesnar fears him. So pretty much that was basically that. And then we saw Kevin Patrick. Kevin Patrick was backstage with Omos. Kevin Patrick was asking Omos about when Styles ended up saying that he regrets taking Omos under his wing. and calling him a piece of shit. So Omos ended up interrupting him. He ended up putting his hand over Kevin Patrick's face. Omos ended up saying, "That's how he feels." So he ended up walking off. And that was that. This match that we saw tonight, Styles versus Omos, contender for the worst match of the year so far. And then we had a mixed tag team match. Akira Tozawa and Tamina versus Reggie and Dana Brooke. If Dana Brooke lost the match, she also loses the garbage 24/7 title. This match was absolutely fucking atrocious. Awful. So Reggie ended up going at it with Akira Tozawa as the bell rung. Reggie delivered a dropkick to Tozawa. Dana Brooke was wanting to tag in. Reggie ended up telling her to hold on. Tozawa ended up mounting some offense on Reggie. So we had Tozawa end up delivering a boot to Tamina accidentally. So Akira Tozawa was terrified that happened. So Tamina ended up slapping Akira Tozawa in the face. Reggie ended up following that up with a senton on Tozawa. And there you go. Reggie and Dana Brooke end up winning this god-awful match. The 24/7 title needs to be fucking retired. Who finds this funny anymore? It's like a circus whenever these guys are on. Whenever the 24/7 title is shown on WWE television, it's a fucking circus. Get it off TV. Retire it. So then we have Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch ended up coming out. Becky Lynch got on the mic. She ended up saying, "Here we are in 2022. And there's something about the new year that inspires hope in people." She ended up saying that it doesn't matter if you failed last year, the past 5 years, or your whole life. Things can change for the better when the clock strikes. Becky Lynch ended up saying that she knows all the women in the back have a title win at the top of their lists. She ended up saying that she admires their dedication. But at the top of her list is remaining champion. Becky Lynch then wanted to say about how no one can beat her, and that many have tried, and they all failed. So Becky Lynch ended up saying about decisions she made in the last year. She ended up saying that she realized she's become a work of art. More like this segment is a work of shit. Because this segment was fucking terrible. So Becky Lynch ended up comparing herself to a Van Gogh painting. She ended up saying that she makes us feel because that's what good art does. So she then insulted the people for having New Year's resolutions. She takes a shot at the crowd in South Carolina. She ended up saying that the woman in the back won't be winning the Raw Women's Championship. She then wanted to take shots at Liv Morgan. Becky ended up saying that Liv broke her promise to herself and the promise she had to all of the fans. And then Liv Morgan ended up coming out. Liv Morgan ended up saying, "New year, but same ugly jacket and same delusional Becky." She ended up saying that she knows, and Becky knows, just how close she was to winning the Raw Women's Championship at day one on Saturday. So Liv ended up talking about how she gives it her all and leaves it all in the ring every time she gets a chance. She ended up saying that's exactly what she did at day one. So Becky then goes on. She ended up saying to Liv Morgan, "That's lovely, but maybe one day Liv will win the Raw Women's Championship, but not until she retires, not until Becky retires." So then out came Bianca Belair. Bianca was talking some trash. She ended up saying that she took a little dewdrop detour, stepping aside to allow others a shot at the title. But now she's back in line for big time Bex. Becky Lynch ended up saying that Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair have just fallen victim to her routine. And that routine is beat, sleep, repeat. Oh, how original, WWE. You just ripped off the segment that you did years ago with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, where Paul Heyman was like, eat, sleep, repeat. Only you took out eat and replaced it with beat for Becky Lynch here. How original. WWE ripping off their own segment that they did years ago. So Becky Lynch ended up talking trash to both Bianca and Liv Morgan. Liv ended up mentioning how she knows nothing about the locker room because she hasn't been in there in years. So Liv ended up telling Bianca Belair to leave because she and Becky were in the middle of something. Bianca ended up saying her history with Becky goes back farther. So Becky ended up telling both Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair to get out of her ring, but figure out who's going to be next, and then let her know. So then both Bianca and Liv Morgan attacked Becky Lynch. They ended up tossing Becky from the ring. So Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan were having some words. Both of them started brawling. Bianca ended up ramming Liv back into the corner with some shoulder thrusts. Liv ended up fighting Bianca off. Liv dropped Bianca with a step-up kick. So they were still brawling. Bianca Belair ended up going for the KOD. Becky ended up coming in, decking both Liv and Bianca from behind. Becky ended up dropping Bianca with the manhandle slam. Liv Morgan was looking off from ringside down the floor. And pretty much that was basically that. So, but overall, this segment was absolutely awful. Absolutely atrocious. And so Kevin Owens was backstage with Seth Rollins. Rollins ended up saying that he is glad Kevin Owens showed up so he can help him decide what to do with this Paul Heyman problem. And, you know, every time I'm seeing this, we're going from Becky Lynch. After a Becky Lynch segment, we go to her husband. Ain't that a coincidence there? So Kevin Owens ended up liking the idea to staple Paul Heyman's mouth shut. So Owens was like, oh, him and Rollins could figure it out later. But first they need to figure out what to do in the Fatal 4-Way. Kevin Owens ended up proposing one of them wins, and the other helps the winner beat Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble for the WWE Championship, and then go on to headline WrestleMania. Him and Rollins will go on to headline WrestleMania. So Rollins ended up liking that idea from Kevin Owens. He ended up saying that that was a great plan. So both of them agreed that they can trust each other, and they've got a plan. So Rollins walked off laughing. Kevin Owens was yelling. He ended up asking to make sure that he isn't lying, that Seth Rollins isn't lying. So that was basically that. And now we had Nikki A.S.H. and Rhea Ripley versus Carmella and Queen Zelina Vega. Women's tag team titles on the line. This was a yawn fest match here. Absolutely fucking boring. We had Nikki and Rhea Ripley end up coming out, and then Carmella and Zelina end up coming out after. So Zelina Vega ended up starting off with Rhea Ripley, and she was trash talking to Rhea Ripley. Zelina Vega ended up slapping Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley ended up slapping Vega back. Rhea Ripley took control of the match. She ended up holding Zelina Vega in the air. Ripley delivered a one-arm vertical suplex to Zelina Vega. Ripley went for the cover. Vega ended up kicking out too. Carmella was at ringside. We saw her with her ugly-looking face mask on, which I'm like, why are they still doing this with Carmella? Why? With the face mask? So Nikki ended up coming in. She ended up taking Zelina Vega down. She went for the cover. Vega kicked out at 2. Nikki ended up keeping control of the match. She delivered a clothesline to Vega. Went for another cover. Vega kicked out at 2. So at the end of the match, we had Zelina Vega end up delivering a roll-up on Nikki. And there you go. Zelina and Carmella end up winning the match and retain the women's tag team titles. Carmella did nothing in this match, but just stand on the outside. It was all Zelina Vega in this match. Awful. This match was a yawn fest. Absolutely boring. So now we had, of course, the Johnny Knoxville Instagram video that he did. He's set to compete in the Royal Rumble match. That's a waste. It's a waste of a number in the Royal Rumble. Awful. We don't need Johnny Knoxville in the Royal Rumble match. What a waste of a spot. Next was the Street Profits versus Apollo Crews and Commander Azeez. This was meh, in my opinion. Street Profits ended up coming out. Got a video package of Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins. They were announcing their spots in the Royal Rumble match, so they're going to be in the Rumble. So they ended up saying that they want the smoke. Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Ray and Dominic announced their spots in the Rumble. Ray ended up saying that they are an unstoppable duo. So there you go. The Mysterios are going to be in the Rumble. And then Apollo Crews and Commander Azeez end up coming out. Montez Ford and Commander Azeez end up starting off the match. Montez Ford end up attacking at Commander Azeez. Commander Azeez end up launching Montez Ford into the corner. Ford end up mounting some offense on Commander Azeez, and it did nothing to Commander Azeez, which Azeez ended up sending Ford back to the corner. He ended up missing a clothesline. Ford was looking to mount some offense. He ended up leaping, and Commander Azeez ended up knocking Montez Ford out of the air with a shoulder. Azeez ended up dropping Ford with a headbutt. He went for the cover, and Dawkins ended up making the save, breaking up the pin. Ford ended up countering. He did a backdrop and nailed the enziguri to Commander Azeez. So we had Angelo Dawkins and Apollo Crews end up going at it. Dawkins delivered a flying elbow drop to Apollo Crews. And Dawkins ended up going for the silencer. And he went for the cover. Commander Azeez ended up breaking up the pin attempt. Dawkins ended up sending Commander Azeez out to the floor. Azeez ended up pulling Dawkins out by his legs. Commander Azeez ended up going to run Dawkins into the ring post. Dawkins countered, and Azeez went into the ring post. Ford tagged in. He ended up dropping Apollo Crews, and then he went for the frog splash on Apollo Crews, and he went for the cover, and there you go. The Street Profits ended up winning the match. Overall, match was meh, in my opinion. And then we had Sarah Schreiber. Sarah Schreiber was backstage with Damian Priest. Damian Priest ended up telling Sarah Schreiber that Dolph Ziggler wants the Damian side of him. But if he can keep the Priest side going tonight, he will retain. He ended up saying that it's up to Dolph Ziggler if he wins, if Priest wins with mercy or with a beating to Dolph. Priest ended up saying that he will remain the United States champion. So that was that. And then we had the match. Dolph Ziggler versus Damian Priest. United States Championship on the line, which we saw this match last week. What was so different in this match that we didn't see last week? Even though the match last week ended in a disqualification. So they said that the United States Championship will change hands if Damian Priest loses the match by a countout or disqualification. So Damian Priest ended up coming into the ring, and then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, We saw Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville in their office. Doudrop ended up coming in. Doudrop was upset over Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair going for the Royal Women's Championship. Doudrop ended up saying that the fans are also tired of seeing the same people challenge Becky Lynch. I think we're tired of seeing this show be so awful every single week. So Doudrop ended up demanding that she gets a shot at the Royal Women's Championship. Sonya Deville ended up telling her that they're not in the business of giving handouts, and that next week we will have Liv Morgan versus Bianca Belair versus Doudrop, and the winner of the match will face Becky Lynch at the Royal Rumble for the Royal Women's Championship. So Doudrop ended up saying, that's more like it. And that was that. So Doudrop just gets slotted in there. So we have a triple threat match next week. Winner gets to face Becky Lynch at the Royal Rumble. So then we had the match end up starring Dolph Ziggler versus Damian Priest, United States Championship. Dolph Ziggler ended up ducking a clothesline from Damian Priest. He then slapped Damian Priest. Damian Priest ended up tossing Dolph Ziggler into the corner. He was beating him down. Priest ended up sending Dolph out to the floor. Priest ended up following out, but Dolph ended up countering with a tornado DDT on the floor. Then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. When Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Dolph Ziggler ended up decking Damian Priest. Damian Priest ended up coming back. He ended up driving Dolph into the mat for, a pop from the crowd. Damian Priest ended up delivering a flying elbow into the corner on Dolph. Dolph ended up blocking the broken arrow. He leveled Damian Priest with some running knees. He went for the cover. Priest kicked out at 2. Dolph was just stomping away at Damian Priest, ended up slapping him around. Priest ended up decking Dolph Ziggler with a right hand. There was a point where Rude was getting involved. Rude ended up coming out of nowhere. He ended up ripping Damian Priest off the top. The referee didn't see that because the referee was tended to Dolph Ziggler. So Ziggler ended up taking advantage of the distraction by Rude. He ended up nailing the zigzag on Damian Priest. Went for the cover. Priest kicked out at 2. So Rude and Ziggler couldn't believe that. And Damian Priest ended up snapping. He turned into the Hulk, with the whole, with his eyes bulging out. So Damian Priest thinks he's the Incredible Hulk. So Damian Priest ended up staring at Rude, and he ended up going out to the floor, started unloading on Rude. He grabbed a chair. He ended up going to smash Rude with it, and the referee was just counting. He counted at 9. Priest ended up coming back into the ring. He brought the chair in the ring with him, and Dolph was begging Damian Priest to just hit him. He's like, hit me, hit me. So we had Rude was also on the apron. He was telling Damian Priest to use the chair on Dolph Ziggler. Priest then ended up turning around. He ended up knocking Rude off the apron with the chair. Dolph took advantage of that. He leveled Priest with the zigzag, and he went for the cover. Priest ended up kicking out. Dolph couldn't believe it. Priest ended up getting back up. Dolph ended up super kicking Damian Priest, but Priest ended up nailing the reckoning on Dolph. He ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Damian Priest ended up winning the match, retaining the United States Championship. Overall, it was just a very meh match. It was the same match that we saw last week, except last week ended in a disqualification. This week, Damian Priest won the match fair and square. Clean win. And then we saw Vince McMahon backstage. Vince was on the phone. Austin Theory ended up walking in. Vince ended up dodging a hug by Theory. Vince ended up telling Theory that he didn't tell him to come in. He just asked who was at the door. Theory then ended up apologizing to Vince. Vince ended up going on about how apologizing is a weakness. Theory ended up coming to ask Vince about his rematch for Finn Balor. Vince ended up saying that it doesn't matter because Theory lost to Balor. And that he did beat the holy hell out of Balor. Vince wanted to say that that's an admirable quality in a man, to always find a way to beat someone. Theory ended up telling Vince McMahon about expecting the unexpected and how he surprised Balor. Vince ended up telling Theory to take a seat. So Vince ended up announcing that Theory will be in the Royal Rumble. And if Theory wins the Rumble, he will go on to main event WrestleMania against the champion of his choosing. So pretty much that was that. If Theory wins the Rumble, he goes to the main event at WrestleMania against the champion of his choosing. So that's that. But in this segment, we had Theory and Vince, just straight there. And then it kept on cutting to Vince's face. Like, oh yeah, Vince is standing here. Cut to his face like that. He's like this. Cut to his face like that. I'm like, that's Kevin Dunn in the production truck. He has to have a close-up of Vince's face. So I'm like, Vince's face is like this, looking at Theory. And then all of a sudden, straight up. That's how it was with this segment. Oh, and then we went to the Miz and Maurice. So Miz and Maurice were in the ring. We saw what happened at day one, where Edge ended up taking on the Miz, which was a snooze fest. And then Beth Phoenix came out there. Maurice was run away from Beth Phoenix. What a snooze fest that match was, Edge versus the Miz. Absolutely boring. So Miz got on the mic. Miz ended up saying that he and Maurice are outraged over the outcome at day one. He ended up saying that he was one skull-crushing finale away from beating Edge, which would have gotten him the respect he deserves. He ended up saying that he's the only two-time Grand Slam champion in WWE history. So the Miz ended up saying that puts him ahead of his peers, but he still has to prove himself in a match against Edge, who is a one-time Grand Slam champion. The Miz ended up saying that there were also questionable referee calls in the match. He wanted to say that he saw the look of defeat in Edge's eyes, the look of someone near their mommy, or in Edge's case, his wife, Beth Phoenix. So the Miz ended up saying that Beth Phoenix allowed Edge to steal a pathetic victory. He ended up saying that we all know Edge deserved to lose for what he did to them last week. So the Miz ended up showing us, his wedding vow ceremony last week, which was the main event of Monday Night Raw, which was absolutely awful. So the Miz was ranting at the fans for enjoying what we saw last week, with the blood coming down on the Miz and Maurice. He ended up saying that this doesn't affect them because they know true love always wins. So Maurice then ended up saying that she would punch Beth Phoenix in the face if she were here tonight. So then the Glamazon's music ended up hitting Beth Phoenix. Beth ended up stopping on the stage. And then Edge ended up making his way out. Edge and Beth ended up heading to the ring together. Beth Phoenix got on the mic. She ended up asking Maurice to repeat herself. And Edge ended up saying that's what they thought. Edge wanted to say that most people would take the loss and move on. But unfortunately, he knows The Miz better than that. Edge ended up saying that he knew The Miz would come out and whine and make excuses for the loss that day one. Beth ended up saying what happened was all her idea. And then Edge wanted to say that he would have won at day one if Beth was involved or not. He ended up saying that he and Beth are crazy enough to give Miz and Maurice what they want. So then Edge proposed a mixed tag team match at the Royal Rumble. So it'll be him and Beth Phoenix versus Maurice and The Miz. So the fans end up liking that idea. Miz end up asking, "Oh, are you guys serious? Are you serious? So the Miz ended up putting Maurice over. Beth ended up telling Miz a simple yes or no will do. So she was like, what's it going to be? Miz ended up saying they accept the challenge. And with Miz saying that him and Maurice accept the challenge, Maurice wasn't happy. So Beth ended up approaching Maurice. Beth ended up dropping Maurice. Miz ended up tending to Maurice in the corner. Maurice got out of the ring. She was pissed off that the Miz would accept the challenge for him and her at the Royal Rumble against Edge and Beth Phoenix. So Maurice ended up storming to the back, and that was that. So there you go. There's your Royal Rumble matchup. Edge and Beth Phoenix versus The Miz and Maurice. Hopefully this ends at the Royal Rumble, and we don't have to see any more of this atrocious feud with The Miz and Edge. Edge deserved better than being in a feud with The Miz. But this whole segment was god-awful. Then we had Kevin Patrick. Kevin Patrick was backstage with Big E. And Big E ended up telling Kevin Patrick being the WWE champion meant a lot to him and to other people. He ended up saying losing the WWE championship to Brock Lesnar is not a bad thing. But we don't wallow in self-pity. And we don't stay down. We make sure our next chapter is our best. Big E ended up saying that he has a chance to right all his wrongs. He ended up saying that he starts the path back to reclaiming his WWE championship. And there's not a soul on earth who can stop him. So Big E ended up walking off. And that was that. And then we had AJ Styles versus Omos. Contender for the worst match of the year so far. This was absolutely awful. Omos is terrible in the ring. He's a Great Khali 2.0. So Styles ended up making his way out. And then Omos made his way to the ring. So Omos was taunting Styles over his size. Styles started unloading with some kicks and punches to Omos, which did nothing to him. Styles ended up ducking the clothesline, started unloading with some strikes in the corner. Did nothing to Omos. Omos backed Styles away. Styles ended up retreating out to the floor. He was taunting Omos from the floor. Omos ended up coming over the top rope. Styles ended up going for his knee. Omos ended up leveling him with a big boot. And that was pretty much basically this matchup here. Omos just destroying Styles in the match. Omos getting the upper hand throughout the whole match with Styles. Omos ended up winning the match. Omos delivered a choke slam to Styles, and that was that. Match was terrible. Contender already for the worst match of the year so far. Moving on. Main event. The Fatal 4-Way match. Kevin Owens versus Big E versus Seth Rollins versus Bobby Lashley. The winner gets to face Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble for the WWE Championship. Kevin Owens ended up coming out first. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, they announced the return of Alexa Bliss next week. And they're calling it Alexa Bliss's Journey Back to Raw. So Alexa Bliss returned to Monday Night Raw next week. And then we had Big E ended up coming out, the former WWE champion. Seth Rollins then came out. And then, last but not least, Bobby Lashley came out along with MVP. So the match ended up starting. Bobby Lashley ended up clotheslining Rollins out to the floor. Big E started unloading on Kevin Owens in the corner. Owens turned it around on Big E. Bobby Lashley was working on Rollins at ringside. Lashley grabbed Rollins, ended up running Rollins face first into the ring post. Big E ended up slamming Kevin Owens and sent Owens to the apron. Big E then ended up knocking Owens off with a running spear. And both Lashley and Owens end up hitting the floor. Big E and Lashley end up facing off in the ring. And Big E end up striking first. They end up going at it. Lashley end up running to an elbow from Big E. Lashley came right back, delivered some clotheslines to Big E. Lashley went for the vertical suplex on Big E, which he hit. Kevin Owens ended up running in. Lashley ended up catching Owens with a neck breaker. He then grabbed Owens for a vertical suplex. And fans were behind Bobby Lashley here. Lashley ended up putting Kevin Owens through the barricade, but Owens ended up sidestepping, and Lashley ended up going crashing through the barricade, bringing the barricade down. Kevin Owens was shouting at Rollins to turn around. Big E ended up launching Rollins with a overhead throw on the floor. Big E ended up starting to take apart the commentary table. MVP was shown tending to Bobby Lashley. Kevin Owens ended up saving Rollins from Big E. He ended up sending Big E into the steps. So Big E was double teamed by both Kevin Owens and Rollins. Rollins and Owens end up burying Bobby Lashley under the pieces of the barricade. They both end up bringing Big E over to the commentary table. Owens and Rollins end up putting Big E through the table with the powerbomb. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Lashley was shown being double teamed by Kevin Owens and Rollins. Both Owens and Rollins ended up bringing Lashley into the ring. Big E was still laid out in the corner. And Owens and Rollins end up hitting Lashley with half of the ring steps. Owens ended up hitting a frog splash from the apron to Bobby Lashley on the floor, which looked cool. Good spot there in the match from Kevin Owens. Owens ended up sending Rollins into Bobby Lashley in the corner with a splash. And Owens ended up following it up with a cannonball to Lashley. So there was a point where they went into the crowd. They were fighting out near the concession stands. Big E ended up getting sent to a wall by Kevin Owens. Bobby Lashley was shown locking the Hurt Lock on Seth Rollins. Owens then ended up making a save. He ended up hitting a trash can lid to Lashley, which pissed him off. Big E ended up countering Kevin Owens. Big E ended up slamming Kevin Owens through the merchandise table. And then Raw went to commercial. Then as Raw came back from the commercial, Big E was shown brawling with Bobby Lashley. They were fighting through the crowd. Rollins ended up joining them. There was a three-way brawl through the crowd. Kevin Owens ended up leaping from high above the seating. He ended up taking them down on the concrete, which that was another awesome spot there, where Kevin Owens leaping up from the seating up high above. So the fans were chanting, "Holy shit!" And fans were chanting, "This is awesome." Owens then delivered a swanton to Big E. Rollins ended up following up with a frog splash. Rollins went for the cover on Big E, but Big E ended up kicking out. Kevin Owens and Rollins ended up nailing a double super kick to Big E. Big E then ended up blocking the stomp. Rollins then blocked the big ending. So Kevin Owens ended up missing a pop-up powerbomb from to Big E, and he was going for the stunner, which Big E ended up blocking it. Owens then ended up hitting the sit-down powerbomb. Lashley ended up breaking it up. Lashley tossed Kevin Owens and Rollins with some overhead throws. At the end of the match, we have Bobby Lashley coming right back, deliver a spear to Kevin Owens because Kevin Owens ended up super kicking Bobby Lashley. He was going for the stunner, which Lashley ended up blocking it. So Lashley came right back, delivered a spear to Kevin Owens, went for the cover, and there you go. Bobby Lashley ended up winning the match, so he will get to face Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble with the WWE Championship on the line. And post-match, we saw Brock Lesnar was shown backstage. Kevin Patrick ended up approaching Brock Lesnar, and he ended up saying, "Oh, would you care to comment on Bobby Lashley winning?" Lesnar ended up telling Kevin Patrick, a comment. I do have a comment. He was like, tell Roman Reigns I'll see him this Friday on SmackDown. And then Bobby Lashley was shown celebrating in the ring. And that was how Monday Night Raw went off the air. Overall, this was a good main event. It was really enjoyable. WWE is finally giving us the match that us fans want to see, and that is Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. And I said in my day one review, WWE would possibly do Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. They are now going to be facing at the Royal Rumble. So that should be a good match if WWE does it right. So looking forward to seeing Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar go at it one-on-one. Should be a good match at the Royal Rumble. And the WWE Championship is on the line. Overall, Monday Night Raw tonight was absolutely atrocious. Like I said, New Year, same old shit for Monday Night Raw. Show was absolutely awful. But anyways, that's it for the Monday Night Raw review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Be sure to check out my previous video, my movie hunting video, if you guys haven't seen it earlier. So, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later.